Hey guys, so I'm making a quick video to show you guys how to hack the alley cat from Little Luxe pattern to create this little romper using the bottom lowland kids lounge shorts. Now the front is just very simple, has a little waist, the shorts, and then the back has a little knot. You can make a double knot. I'll show you guys how altering the pattern. And I did put elastic because I thought that the waistband wasn't gonna hold the back, but on this new one that I'm gonna make, I'm not gonna be using elastic because the waistband held just fine without having to use the elastic. Now these are the supplies that you guys are going to need. You're going to need the lowland kids lounge slash sweat shorties, okay, the cuffs for the shorts, and then for the waistband, so my daughter is a size 4T in the shorts, but the waistband I'm cutting it out to a 3T just because it holds better, and then that way you don't need to use elastic on your romper. So you're gonna have to have those pre-cut already. And then this is the alley cat leotard. Make sure that you guys, if you guys do not have this pattern already, you guys buy the correct pattern. They have different variations of which ones you can buy. Like one is like the dress and the romper that they have and other things. So make sure you guys get the one that includes the leo top, the crop top, and then the leotard. This is just a normal bodice front and bodice back for the leotard version. So you're gonna need those, and then you're gonna need 2 pieces of computer paper blank so you can retrace your new pattern. The front, we're not gonna do anything to it. The back, we are. You're gonna need some scissors, rotary cutter, ruler, fabric marker, crayon, and then a yard of knit fabric. This fabric is from Made of Love Fabrics. It's double brush poly. Alright, so let's get to making the new pattern. Alright, so we're gonna start by taping together our 2 blank pieces of paper. If you have tracing paper, whatever works best for you guys, you might need 4 pieces like this in case your pattern is bigger. I'm making a size 3T, so the bigger sizes, obviously you're gonna need a little bit more paper, but make sure that when you lay out your paper you have enough room going down this way, because this is the way we're gonna draw that that tying piece in the back. So you're basically gonna start by just retracing your pattern as you would, but just from here all the way down to here, and then we're gonna leave right here and right here blank because that's where we're gonna modify it. Alright, so I got it all traced out, just right here, through here, right here. What we're gonna do now, depending on how you want your back open, so let me bring this back really quick. Alright, so depending how much you want your back open, and if you want a double knot and just instead of just one, you got to strategically place where your notches are going to go right here. So this one I just put it like in the middle of the back, and it just left like a little hole right here. Yesterday that my daughter wore it, I kind of wish I would have left more open right here, so I'm going to leave it a little bit more open. If you want double knot, when you start tracing it out, make sure you measure out like around right here if this is where you wanted to start. That way you have enough room to include both knots. So let's go back to our tracing thing. And then right here, in this spot, it would be great to use something to hold on the pattern so it doesn't move around when you start tracing the other part. So once you measured out where exactly you want your first tie to be, I'm just kind of gonna freehand draw this. Okay, so we're gonna start tracing down right here. In this version, I'm gonna make it a double knot because I do want to try out how that look would look. And right here, when you start hitting the first little curve, when it starts kind of like slanting down this way, is where we're gonna start with our first notch. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of have to sketch this out, which is what I usually do with most of the patterns I modify. And you're gonna draw a big tube like this. Now keep in mind, I know this looks a little wide, but you are gonna be stitching around the area like this. So it's gonna shrink a little bit down and it's gonna be a lot smaller. So make sure you make it wide enough that with the seam allowance, you have enough to tie it with and it doesn't look scrawny or anything. All right, so still keeping my pattern aligned like this, we're gonna go down again a little bit more, like 2-3 inches or so, and start making a curve like this. And then we are going to draw another knot, little loop thingy. I don't even know what it's called, but this thing. Okay, so we're gonna have two like this. All right, so keeping our pattern aligned, and then 1 second. Sorry about that, my daughter needed a little snacky break. All right, so back to our pattern. Now this is where our pattern goes down like this. It's okay, this part's not gonna be here, so we don't need to trace it. So now that we have our two little notches traced out, you're gonna want to start tracing the bottom part right here and make it go all the way so we know where our pattern ends. And then here, even though our t-shirt technically ends right here, we're not gonna let it end right there. We're gonna go curve down like this again and make sure it looks like this, and just kind of fix it around the edges. So we're taking like a good inch off, and then this is gonna do that back kind of circle at the bottom that I showed you guys, and then just go over your loops that you drew, kind of clean them up a little bit as to how you want them to look. So like this one, I kind of got a little sloppy with it, so I'm just gonna go back and darken the where I'm actually gonna cut, and just clean it up. So you're gonna be left with something like this. Now these, make sure that you draw them at least a good 5 to 6 inches, just so you have enough room to tie. And if you want to get a little fancier with it, draw them even longer, so you, when you tie the back, you have enough room to draw like a bow or something. All right, so now we're gonna cut out our pattern. The front stays the same, nothing changes on there. Now let's cut out our pattern. All right, now we got all of our pattern pieces cut out. Our bodice back, which we're gonna need 2 of. Our bodice front, which we will need 2 of as well. And then for the lowland kids, lounge shorties, we didn't modify anything. It's still the same. Just make sure that whatever size you're making, the waistband, you cut out a size smaller. So these are 4T, 3T waistband, 4T cuffs, everything the same. All right, now we're going to go ahead and cut out all of our pieces, and then I'll walk you guys on how to sew it. That way you can have a very seamless top like this one. Let me show you. So for the top, the way I sew it, I end up with side seams that are seamless. You can't see the seam on either side. And then how to get all of this tied up, little knot and everything, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out. Now I'm cutting my fabric, but just a quick tip. So see how I almost accidentally placed it like this or upside down. Make sure that when you guys are doing the fold, you place it correctly so your pattern, if it is a pattern, if it's a solid, it doesn't matter, but if it's a pattern, it goes up and down, so it looks nice on your shirt. Now let's get to cutting. You can use a fabric marker and trace it and then cut it. I like to just use the rotary cutter. For me, it's easier and faster, but it's really up to you what you like to use. Now with this, before I forget to mention, just like on your front leotard piece, you're cutting on fold. This, we're not cutting on fold. We are cutting 4 individual pieces of just this. So we're gonna cut right here, right here, right here, right here, everywhere. We are not cutting on fold, just 4 individual pieces. Alright guys, I'm back now with all the pattern pieces cut out. So we are going to have your waistband. That's all cut out. We're going to have the little leg cuffs. This is all for the shorties. Front and back. And we'll leave those to the side for now. We're going to work on the main part right now, which is the top. Let's see. So we got our bodice front, bodice back. If there's particular pattern placement that you guys like on your fabric, make sure. Usually what I do, if it's like a floral or something, I usually lay out my bodice front and back if I'm using the same fabric in front of me and see which one I like better for my actual front. But this one, the pattern is pretty similar, so it's not gonna matter for me right now. So we'll put them on the side in 2 different piles. And then we have 4 pieces of our little knot back that we're going to be doing. I know they look a little funky, but I promise it's going to look amazing. So this is one side and this is the other. Let me see if I can get it in there. Yep, there we go. All right, and then we got 2 more identical here, which is going to be our lining. So let's match them up, the ones that go with each other. So this one goes with this one, and this one with this one. Now, to get started, the reason why I put everything into 2 different piles is because we're gonna have to treat it just like the alley cap, how we're gonna sew it up. So to start, we're gonna take our lining. I'm gonna say this is our lining for now. If you're using a different color, this is your lining. Put your lining to the side, and this is your front. Now, what you're gonna do, right sides together, you're gonna line these up perfectly. So this, put it up to the sleeve right here, like this, and you're gonna stitch along these edges right here. And I'm just gonna put a pin in, use a pin, clips, whatever is easier for you. So we're gonna pin that, and then we're gonna take our opposite side, and we are going to pin it as well. And let's get that all pinned up. So your result is gonna look something a little like this. Don't mind the little loops for now. We are not going to sew them just yet. Sorry about the background noise. My dog seems to have the sniffles and is sneezing everywhere. All right, back on track. Would you stop it? He's a good doggy. All right, so we're gonna do the exact same thing to our lining and just have it prepared so we can stitch it. Once again, right sides together and match them up how they should be. And make sure you don't accidentally sew them opposite, like accidentally put this part on this part. And a good way of knowing that is that your little notch thingies are always gonna face each other together, like that. Because I know this piece can look a little awkward and a little hard to tell like what is what. But that's always a good way to know that these things have to face each other. And we're gonna pin these 2. Get them all pinned up. Okay, so head over to your serger, sewing machine, whatever you're using. If you're using a sewing machine, use a zigzag stitch. If you're using a serger, just serge as normally and sew all the top 4 sides right here of both the main and the lining. All right, I'm back. I got both my bodice and my lining all sewn up. Usually, pretty much always really, unless I'm running low on fabric, I always use the same kind of fabric for my bodice and for my lining, just because to me it's more aesthetically pleasing. So now this is where it gets a little tricky, as always, but we'll get you guys figured out on it. All right, so we're gonna start by putting these 2 right sides together, and the easiest part to do this with is to start with the bodice front right here and get them all lined up perfectly. And you're gonna use a lot of clips or pins, whichever is you prefer for this part. And we're gonna start by, we're gonna pin all the inside. Don't worry about the arms or anything right now. We're just gonna pin all the inside. And it's easier to start at the corners of your bodice front, right at the top, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so let's pin away. Now I did want to make a quick video, but I felt like if I made it too short, it wasn't gonna go into detail explaining. And I always hate when DIY tutorials end that way because I miss a lot of the things that I can't figure out on my own. And I end up messing the project. But it's okay. We're going to get this one all done. All right. So let's start with the left side first. Pinning everything together. Now, here we go. Actually, let's do the right side first, because I just remembered something that's going to be a lot easier for you guys. If you're using pins, start with the right side. If you're using clips, it doesn't matter which side you start with. And I'll let you guys know why I'm saying this right now. Let me just get these lined up. All right. So we're going to start right here, and we're going to start going this direction. Now, what I say, if you have pins, to start with the right side, because we need to pin a specific way. So you're going to start pinning all the way at the bottom. And the way, the little head of your pin, it's going to go towards the direction you're going to start sewing. So I'm going to start sewing from the right side, because if I started sewing from the left side, it's like an awkward angle for the sewing machine. So start sewing on the right side, and I'll show you guys why. But as you're pinning, make sure that the little head is pinning towards you, because that's the way you're going to be sewing. And also because if you're in the middle of sewing and your pin is like this, it's going to be harder to take this out, and it might mess up where your fabric's at. So make sure that the little head point towards you. And we're going to start doing this and go all around the first little loop. All right, and okay, so this fabric's rolling a little bit on me, so this is why I like to pin. You don't have to pin, but this is why I like to pin. All right, so we're gonna pin all around like this. It's gonna take a lot of pins, so make sure you have a lot handy. And I like to pin just because, yeah. So this fabric rolls a little bit, which isn't too bad, but I like to pin because it could always move out of place, and then it just looks funny, and it's just easier. It's a lot more work, but it makes your life a whole lot easier. And believe it or not, we're going to be able to pin all sides, well, both sides, the left and the right side, in one long sew. So make sure that your sewing machine has enough thread, no playing chicken. So that way it's easier for you guys to just get it all done in one single stitch. All right, and we're gonna keep going now. You see how it's forming like a little connect the dots kind of line for me. So I'm gonna start sewing right here, and as I'm going like this, it's just guiding me on the way the pins are going, where I'm gonna be sewing. So let me get the rest pinned up, and I'll show you guys the finish. All right, I got everything pinned in place, and I know it's a lot of pins or a lot of clips, whatever you guys use, but this is the amazing thing I like about this hack pattern that sometimes I dislike about sewing, is that I have to start and stop and sew here and then stop and sew there. And I really like how, even though it looks difficult, how easy this is going to be, that this is just going to be one stitch. If you're using a sewing machine, use a stretch stitch. But when you're getting to this, make sure that you are not stretching these. I made the mistake of stretching it out on the other ones, and they looked a little floppy. So make sure you don't stretch it. But this is why I wanted to start with the left side. And I guess you technically could start with the right side. Whatever really works for you guys best. I like starting with the left side. But as you can see, I started pinning my little pins with the heads facing me, so it's almost like a little racetrack course. You see how this is the way I'm going to insert it into my sewing machine, and the way the little heads are going is the way I'm going to sew all around and through the neck, and then the other one, and like this all the way to the end. And as I'm sewing, so you're sewing like this, you start pulling the pins, and it guides you where you have to go next. Super easy. So let's get that all sewn up and then we'll be back. So I just want to show you guys how quick and easy it is to sew with the pins following you like that. See, I'm sewing. I slow down a little bit just to have enough time to take out the pin, and I keep going, take out the pin. And you know, if you're in the business of making clothes and selling them, I don't sell them. This is just for my daughter's personal use. But another thing I always tell ladies is when you make a piece of clothing, as you're making it, through every step, write down through which step you could have been faster at. So this is one of the hacks that I do, to strategically place the pins. So as I'm going, I can take them out as I go. Because if you were in the business of selling clothes, you want to have as much time in the day to make more garments and not be stuck on the same garment for like 2-3 hours. You want to be efficient and you want to be speedy in what you do, while still creating something pretty nice. So just keep going all around. Be careful around the edges, go a little slow. For this part, I prefer to use a sewing machine because sergers are not that good with corners. But yeah, just keep going. All right, now it is all sewn. If you didn't use a serger and just a sewing machine like I did, no need to trim because this is not going to be seen anywhere. And now we're going to flip as you normally would if you were making the alley cap. Which the easiest way for me to flip it, I always start at the corners and flip it like that, and then just pin these two in place so they don't go missing on me. There we go. One, and then the other one, just flip it wrong sides together, just like that, and pin it. Okay. And then your top part, all you're gonna do is flip it like that as well. And we got our top all flipped. Now we are going to top stitch, but don't top stitch now. And I'll explain to you guys why in a little bit. I want to finish off, if you're adding sleeves or ruffles or anything, this is the part to do it now on this next step we're gonna do. But I always like to top stitch after I've done that, and I'll show you guys why in a little bit. So all you're gonna do is flip these little things inside out as well, and then just push it through with a ruler or something that's not sharp, because you do not want to create a hole in them. So I like to just use the ruler. It's easier. It has little corners that I can push the rest in. We got one. And see what I told you guys? I made it big. So see, compared to this, it's a lot bigger. And then once we stitch it, it gets smaller. So that's why when we were drawing our pattern, I said not to make it too small, because then it would have shrunk down to something like this. So we want it to still be a nice size. All right, so let's flip the other ones over. All right, now we got all of our pieces all turned out. Now I know right here looks a little wrinkly. You can press it, but either way we're going to get rid of that once we top stitch. But again, this is not the step to top stitch right now. So we got everything flipped inside out. Now we're ready to do our sides, and we'll do it just the same way you would any other time with the burrito roll method. If you are adding sleeves or ruffles or anything on the sleeve option, well, sleeve armway, sorry, here, now it's the time to pin it and do it. If you are adding ruffles, I'm just going to take a quick piece of fabric to show you how you would do it, in case you guys don't know how to do that. So let's say this is my ruffle. Before I start rolling this end into a burrito, this is the sleeve I'm going to work on. So you're just going to go ahead and pin it around only one side of the arm. So you see how it's flipped? Only one side of the arm like this. And you're going to flip it, pin it all around up to this little corner and all around right here. Same with the sleeve. Pin it all around. And then of course it's gonna have a little excess. So the excess at the top that you are not sewing, tuck it in and roll it so it doesn't get caught into your stitching. Now, for those of you that have never done the burrito roll method, I hadn't done it before either. And for a very, very long time, I refused to do it because I thought it was so hard. But once you learn it, you'll never go back. So you're gonna start over here on your opposite end, wrong sides together. All the fabric is wrong sides together. And this is what we're gonna do. You're gonna start rolling right here. Make sure you do a nice tight roll right here. And I always like to pin it in place, whether I do ruffles or sleeves or not, because it's just easier and it'll get out of the way for me. And then you're gonna do this little end and roll it like this, a little bit into place like that. No need to pin. Pin if the fabric is a little wonky to work with and it's not staying for you. But this fabric is amazing to work with, so I don't need to do that. And again, do the other little corner and pin if you need to. If not, there we go. And then move the little arms out of the way, tuck them in like this as well. And this is all you're gonna do. You're gonna open up the side that you're about to stitch, throw it over the burrito that you just burritoed, and then wrap it around like this. So see how my burrito is tucked inside, and then these are the sleeves that I'm about to pin. So pin it right here so I can sew it. And then over here, same thing. My burrito is in there, and then I have the top of my fabric. It's gonna wrap around the burrito, and the bottom of my fabric is gonna wrap around the burrito that we did. So it's right there. And then to make sure, just to double check that you're pinning the right sides, you'll just check that everything's inside and this sides add up to what you're sewing right here. So if I had accidentally grabbed one of the sides from the burrito roll, there would have been a twist somewhere around here that shouldn't belong there. It should all lay nicely together like a big puzzle piece. So we're gonna do this side. The burrito's already all in there. And then pin. There we go. And pin it. Now, the reason why I don't like to top stitch before I do this, last time I did that and it was so hard to do the sleeves because I took off some of this. So around here is where you would usually top stitch. So you take out an extra inch or so when you top stitch, and then there's not that much room inside the burrito right here to get your sleeve done, because you already took off a good hunch off of here by top stitching. So then you're left with this little tiny piece that you kind of got to cram your sleeves and everything in, and it's just a lot harder to work with. So it's easier to just wait till you're done doing the sleeves and everything, and your top is essentially done before you top stitch. All right, so now that we got this pinned, we're gonna stitch from here all the way to here with a serger, or if you're using a sewing machine, use a zigzag stitch, and let's get that sewn up. All right, so I got my side all sewn up, and now very easily you open up your burrito right here and pull out the other side. Don't forget about that pin though, because I have poked myself way too many times with that pin. All right, and then see, we got one end and then our other end over here, which turned inside out for me. So let me go ahead and get that turned right side out again. All right, so the side that I just finished sewing, I'm gonna put it over here. Keep doing that, sorry. And then the side that I need to sew, I'm gonna put it facing me. Sewn side over here, facing me, the side that has not been sewn. So again, same thing. Since this is already sewn, it makes it a little bit easier to do a burrito roll, but still pin it just because it'll be easier to sew the other armhole without this in the way. Same thing over here, start rolling and then put the straps into there. Let's do the other side. Okay. And now once again, you grab this piece. These are wrong sides together right here. Open it up. Cover the piece all around. So see how I'm opening up the piece all around like this, and then tuck it underneath like that. And then all your burrito is inside. And then pin where you gotta sew. So my corner armholes will be here. Pin. And the other side. And pin. Perfect. So now again, push all the burrito out of the way so you do not accidentally stitch it. And then let's stitch it all close. Alright, so I got my burrito sewn up like this. And then again, grab the inside tuck you had and then just pull it out. And you will have, oh, see, I forgot about the pin again. And I poked myself. Alright, and then just pull the rest of it out. And now you got everything all sewn perfectly. You got your bodice front, bodice back, and then the bodice front and back for the tie-up portion of this. So see, now it's coming along a little better. I know it looked a little funky in the beginning, but you know, it came along now. You just gotta trust the process, and it might look a little funny, but sometimes you just gotta take risks and go for it, and trust me, the end result is always worth it. Now here is where we top stitch. We are only going to top stitch right now around same exact way, the exact same way that we sewed this part. We're gonna start again with our right side or left side, whichever you guys are more comfortable with, at the very bottom right here. And this is a reason why I don't like to trim the edges. It lays so flat and it makes a natural, almost like a inside rectangular lining. And you'll know what I'm talking about when you feel it on your own in your fabric. It's like this little thing right here, and it lays flat perfectly. So when you are stitching it with a straight stitch all around, it's just going to create almost like a piping effect, and you guys will see that in a second. So we're going to stitch all the exact same way that we did, all straight, and then I'll show you guys what to do next. So this is where you guys will notice that like your stitches, you'll feel around your stitches, and it almost makes like the perfect guide to where you got a top stitch. So like this is around where my stitches end all folded together. So when I'm feeding it into my sewing machine, it's almost like a guide to have like straight stitches all around. It guides you, and it really does help. That's why I don't like to trim it. Now, top stitching is completely optional. You do not need to do this at all. I just like the way it looks, but you can very much do without it. Alright, now we top stitched it all around. And see, this is why I like it. It just has like a nice little clean finish. And the stitches on my inside helped me almost like a guide to where I had to stitch. And it made like this clean, you know, edge that almost looks like it's piped. So perfect, pretty. Alright, now we are going to stitch up these ends together, so it can be a full seamless finish. Now, how do we do this? All right, so we're gonna start with whatever side you want to start first, the front and the back. And it's honestly super easy. All you have to do is open up right here, this corner where your stitches end, and this corner when you open it, when your stitches end, join them together, right sides together like this. And it's the same side, not the opposite side, same side, all together. Line up your stitches, pin and then line up your ends like this. There you go. And then it's gonna look a little weird because this end is already stitched, which is our other end, but that's fine. You're gonna line up your other end either way, so you're gonna end up something like almost like a circular thing right here. But you guys will see how amazing it comes out. All right, so we're gonna pin those two in place, and then we're gonna do our other side. So flip, leave those pinned, and then see our armhole curve right here. And then all we're gonna do, again, open up, stitch ends, open up over here, other stitch ends, and join. And let's pin them all together again. Pin, and then pin the ends. And then once again, you're gonna serge this part or zigzag stitch. Either way, it's gonna be completely seamless. You will not see your stitches once you are done with this part. All right. So let me take it over to my sewing machine and get that all stitched up. All right, so let's sew. Make sure you have it all lined up perfectly. Now this part is gonna, once you finish the first side, like the first top side, it's gonna get a little funny. All right, as soon as you pass this pin, as you can see, the fabric kind of bunches up down here because the other part wasn't super flat, the part that we had already stitched up. So it makes this part a little difficult, but it's okay. Just make sure, you know, you pull this side up like this so this part starts laying flat for you guys. And then see, just keep lining it up, and then make sure you're pushing the rest of this fabric out of the way so you don't accidentally stitch it down. And then just finish sewing it all through. So see how I'm having to like pull this side a little bit just so my ends line up perfectly flat, because the other side was already stitched up, so it makes it for an awkward angle, but still fairly easy. Just get it all stitched through. All right, so now I'm all done stitching it through. Again, no need to trim the edges if you did use a sewing machine. If it's a serger, your edges will already be trimmed. Just get rid of these little thread hairs, and then all you do is flip it in, wrong sides together, and then you see how we have a perfectly joined sleeve with no stitches on either side. Let me get that lined up perfectly. This is my other side that I had already stitched and turned inside out. Just lay it flat. You can top stitch around the armhole. I will do that later just because I'm not sure if I want to top stitch it yet. And there we go. So your top is officially all done. And then all right, your top is officially done. Here we go. Just line up the ends perfectly, and then you have your 2 notches for tying. All right, so I'm just gonna tie it really quick just to show how it would look. Double knot, not too tight, just so the knot holds up. And then kind of arrange it in place the way you want it. This is why I said if you guys wanted to do like a little bow or something to make these a lot longer, and then you guys can end up with a little bow tied up. And then another one, and another one. And see, now you have your little tied back. And then once you press it and get it all together, it's gonna look super cute. All right, so now we end up with this raw end, which is what we're gonna attach to our shorties with. Before I do that, I like to just get everything pinned in place, because once we attach the shorts, you're gonna have to find your 4 points, your front, your back, and your sides. So I like to get out my sides out of the way. The sides are where your arm stitches end right here. And then to find your front, you fold and touch your 2 stitches like that. And then this end is gonna be your front, like that. And just pin it and just get it pinned out of the way. And then these 2 little ends are gonna be your back. No need to pin because it's already the end, and it's kind of like a natural marker to let you know where it's at. We're gonna put this to the side, and we are going to sew our shorts as normally as you would. No need to modify it. Just remember the waistband, 1 size smaller than the size that you are doing. I'm going to do a quick brief explanation on how to sew up the shorties in case this is your first project and you're not familiar with sewing. You're going to take both your pieces that you cut out, right sides together, and at first we're going to sew this end and this end. So let's go ahead and take it to the sewing machine and we'll continue to the next step. Alright, now I'm back, sewn sides. If you did use the sewing machine like I did, trim the edges off of each side. If you use the serger, no need. I just like using a sewing machine. I'm very boring and old school like that. Just, I don't know. I never got used to the serger, never liked it, and I don't sell the clothes that I make. It's only for my daughter. But if you are planning to sell these, I do recommend you get a serger just because it has a nicer finish to it. But if you're just using it for personal use, you're more than fine with a normal sewing machine. So just trim the edges with your rotary cutter. Don't necessarily recommend the rotary cutter because you can accidentally pop a stitch. So your scissors, clean up as much as you can of the sides as possible. And when you do that, you're gonna open up right sides together and join the crotch pieces. And you're just gonna sew with a straight stitch or a serger at the crotch. Alright, now that you've sewn up your crotch piece, all you do is flip inside out, wrong sides together, and you got like these little underwear looking things. Set those to the side. We're gonna sew our waistband and our cuffs. All you're gonna do for the waistband and the cuffs is join the ends for all 3 of these pieces. Right sides together right here. And serge or zigzag stitch. You will not need to trim the edges if you're using a sewing machine because the edges that you're sewing will be hidden. So flip all of these like so. Alright, and then we're just gonna sew right sides together along the edge. Alright, we got all of our pieces all sewn up. All you gotta do now is meet the ends like this, fold in half to have the right sides facing out, and flip it all around for all 3 pieces like that. Alright, we got them all flipped and folded. Now what a lot of sewing patterns tell you to do is to pin and force. When I first started sewing, I was just lost. I did not know what pin and force mean and had to go through all these video tutorials to find it and everything, and it kills me because it's frustrating and it discourages you from sewing, and then you mess up the first project and yada yada. So I always want to make sure I explain exactly what everything means because there are a lot of people who are sewing their first garment for the first time and it's just easier to help them out. Alright, so what pinning and form means is you're going to find your 4 corners. So your first corner is going to be where both your stitches meet. So you're going to pin, and that's the first pin. And you fold right here perfectly in half. And here is going to be, got a little stuck. Alright. Where that fold ends, that's going to be your second corner. And it's very important that you know how to pin and force because almost with every pattern you're gonna have to pin and force to join the garment pieces together. So now that you got your 2 corners pinned in place, to find your other 2 corners, you're gonna fold right here the pins together perfectly, and your first end over here is going to be your third corner, and then your other end over here is going to be your fourth corner, and that is pinning in fours. You got your four corners pinned. That way your cuff is evenly spaced out in fours for when you attach. We're going to do this to the other two pieces, the other leg cuff and the leg band. All right, now that we got the cuffs and the waistband pinned in fours, we're going to pin our leg cuffs in four. Do not do this yet. We're doing a little thing a little different than what you normally would sew up the pants with. You can skip it if you like, but we'll get to that part. So we're going to pin in fours, same thing. Your first corner is going to be right here where your stitches meet. So let's pin that in place. Now, if you are selling these, or if you just want to be able to do this faster, what I used to do instead is, instead of pinning with a fabric marker, I would just put a mark on all my corners, same with my cuffs, and then line up those marks together perfectly and then pin. So that way I didn't have to take the time to pin one leg cuff and then pin this and then pin them together. It was just one pin at the same time. It just creates for more efficiency and to get your garment done a little bit faster. When you have kids, time is precious because they like to take a lot of snack breaks. All right, so one corner, second corner. We're going to do the same thing as the leg cuffs. Meet the two pins in place like that. And then whatever folds perfectly right here, that's where your third corner is going to be, and fourth. So if you're wanting to do it with the marker, this is literally what I would do. Instead of pinning, I would just grab my marker or my fabric chalk and just put a little tiny bit of marker right there. It can be the iron-on marker, so when you iron it, it dissolves, or the water ones that, you know, go away when you wash it. I use chalk because I can just kind of dust it off and it was gone. But here, pinned in place perfectly. And then let's do the other side. All right, now I got it pinned. I got my leg cuff I'm about to attach. Now, a question I see quite often in a lot of the sewing groups is, how do you get your cuffs if you're using a fabric that has a pattern, really? Because for solids this doesn't matter, but for fabrics that have a pattern, it's very important. I see a lot of people make the same mistake when they attach their cuff, the design comes upside down like this. So let's say I'm attaching this and see how these two don't match. It's upside down. So the way to fix that, and honestly just the easiest way I remember when I'm attaching my cuff, is I find a little corner when I'm attaching, and so this is the way I would pin it, right? So this is wrong. If the designs don't match up like this together, once you flip it, your design's gonna come upside down. So flip it to the other end, like so. Match an end, there we go. So like this. I'm having a hard time finding the end. There we go. All right, so now I found this end and I flipped my cuff this way. When your designs match perfectly like this, when you're pinning it, once you flip it over, that design will match perfectly. If you're pinning it and this design looks like this, when you're pinning it down, you're doing it wrong. If they're opposite from each other, you're doing it wrong. But if they're like this and they match with the way that they're going, so see how this one's going up and up, then once you flip it, it'll be correct. Okay, now to get to the part of actually pinning it down. So now that I found the right side to how I'm gonna pin it, this end where your stitches meet is best if you line it up with the end that the stitches end right here. Just that way the stitches just go perfectly with one another, and you don't have like an awkward leg cuff and one end that has like random stitches. So we're gonna pin and see. If you had done it with the marker or the fabric chalk, you would just find the lines that you drew and then pin it there and get it done. And then you go to your next pin and pin it again. And then that way it'll all be even and you don't end up with like an awkward leg cuff or just something else. Okay. And then we pin it again. Take out that pin and pin it again. And you can use clips too. It took me a while to get, you know, used to the pins. I used clips for a very long time because I could not get used to the pins. All right. So you got all your fours pinned in place, and now it's time to sew. I like to start at the corner that has the stitches and take it from there. Now, some leg cuffs, depending on the pattern that you use, are smaller than the actual leg just for a tighter fit. When that happens, all you have to do is stretch as you sew just a little bit, but just stretch the leg cuff, not the actual leg hole itself. But in this case, it just fits perfectly. I don't need to stretch anything, and then just sew around with a zigzag stitch. If you're sewing with a sewing machine, make sure you trim the ends when you're done sewing it. And with a serger, it's already trimmed, so no need to trim or do anything else. So sew with a zigzag stitch all around, and then repeat for the other side. All right, so I got my leg cuffs all sewn up. And see how matching the sailboats when I was pinning them, now they come up with a perfect seamless pattern. So see, my sailboats are facing the same way as these sailboats on both sides. So they match my pattern perfectly. All right, so now if you want to skip this step, it's completely up to you. I like to do this just because for me it looks a little nicer, but it's really up to you. So because the waistband is a size smaller, there's a significant difference. So what I like to do, my waistband measures 9 inches across, and then my shorts measure 11 inches across. So what I'm going to do a couple of gathering stitches, which is just a straight stitch all around. And then I'm just going to gather it so it matches perfectly to my waistband like this. Now the reason I want to do this is because I didn't do it on the last pair of that I made for my daughter, and I didn't like that even though after I pressed it with the iron and everything, these little like mountains is what I call them didn't disappear. So I want a perfectly flawless finish that doesn't have like these little curves and edges. You are more than welcome to just skip the step. Depending on the fabric you work with, you might not have that problem, or you know, it's really up to you. So what we're just gonna do is do one line of gathering stitches all around, and then yeah, we'll get to that. All right, so for those of you that have never done gathering stitches, you set your machine to a straight stitch. I like to switch my tension. Let me see if I can. All right, I like to switch my tension all the way to 9, because as I sew it, it starts gathering for me. So your stitch length is going to go up to the highest number it goes. Your stitch width is going to go up to the highest number it goes. So really you're setting it up to go to the highest it can go. And I like to start with wherever my stitches meet or end. And make sure you have a good enough tail when you start stitching, because this is going to come in handy. All right, so now we just straight stitch all around. And see how I'm already stitching, it's already gathering. So when I do the actual gathering, I don't do a lot of gathering because my machine does it for me. This is how I also do ruffles and everything, because it just makes it a lot easier. Or with big skirts, because it just gathers up most of the fabric for you. And then sometimes you don't even have to end up gathering anything. It just gathers it to the perfect size that you need. Now don't back stitch. Pull out your needle and end a little bit right before where you started, and make sure that you got a good amount of tail there. So there we go. Now I open up my shorts and it gathered a little too much. So all you have to do is stretch it out a little bit. Now before you start gathering, on one end, tie up that end. Tie up both of them, but make sure you don't get them mixed up. So like this is for one end and this is the other. Separate them really well. And let me see if I can zoom in to show you. Okay. So this is my front and back for my first set of stitches. So let's go ahead and tie those up. So that way when you are stretching out what you gathered, you don't go ahead and undo them, because it's just gonna undo on one end. So let's see. All right. So to make it this foolproof, make sure, let me see if it, there we go. These are your two front ones. Do not tie these together because they do not go together and then you won't be able to gather. You have a front and you have a back stitch. Those are the ones that you need to tie together. So see, these two go with each other. These are the two I'm gonna tie, because if I tied the other two, I'm not gonna be able to gather my stitches. So tie those up in a knot right here. All right, and now all you're gonna do, so this side is my side that's tied up, and then this side right here is the one that's not tied up. I'm gonna take my gathers from this side, since my machine gathered too much to the size I want, and I'm just gonna evenly spread them out and take them over to my other side that's not tied up, and let some of those gathers loose till it matches the correct length. And what I do, every time I let go a little bit of gathers, I put them up to my board or ruler, whichever is easier, and match them up. If not, if you don't have a board or a ruler, take them up to your waistband and see if they match up perfectly. So this is still a little too short. I gotta make it a little bit, just a little bit wider to match up perfectly. And then once we do that, we'll tie up the ends. And you see how there's more gathers back here and everything? We'll just evenly place them out throughout the whole shorties. All right, so I found my perfect length. And now I'm just gonna spread the gathers evenly around. I already tied up my other end, so I don't undo them anymore. And then just evenly pass them around so you have an even amount of gather all around your shorts. There we go. Just a little bit more on this side. And now I have some evenly gathered shorties. Now if you want to switch up the look, you can switch all the gathers to the back with no gathers in the front. Whatever your preference is, because once you tie up the gathers, your size is not going to change. It's going to stay the same no matter where you move the gathers to. Just be careful when you do it. Okay, so there we go. I kind of moved mine all more to the back, and now it matches perfectly up with my waistband. Now before I pin it, I'm gonna do the exact same thing I showed you guys. Find the side that matches perfectly with my pattern, like that. And then once I do that, I'm gonna start pinning. This end where you joined your waistband, I like to put it towards the back of the garment. So, and the way you know what your front and your back is, when you evenly hang up your shorts like this and match up the way I do it is I match up the crotch pieces and then I shake them down, and like this, there's gonna be one side that's a little bit taller than the other side. The side that's smaller is gonna be your front piece, and the side that's taller in the back, that's your back piece. So we're gonna start pinning it off right there, which, let me find my ends again. double check that my pattern matches my waistband like that, and then start pinning in fours all around. Once you get it all pinned up, you're gonna go ahead and zigzag stitch, trim the edges, or serge stitch all around. Now, one thing I completely forgot to mention is to do your gathering stitches a little bit downward. So when you sew your waistband onto your shorts, you don't sew on the actual line for the gathering stitches. Why? Because I go ahead and after I'm done gathering and attaching my waistband, I go with my stitch picker and I take out all my gathering stitches. The reason why I do this is because a straight stitch, as you guys know, is not stretchy. So when you go and stretch out your shorts, it like constricts it because of that stitch. But when you take out your gathering stitch, you're still left with the gathers, but without the constriction. So I'm just going around and taking out carefully and pulling out the gathering stitch that I had done. All right, now for a very final step. And if you hung out this long, thank you so much. All right, we got our top and we got our shorts. It's this easy, people. You just do your shorts, and I know it's a little time consuming and everything, but as you keep doing it and doing it and doing it again, you'll find little shortcuts where you could have done it faster, etc. Now, all we have to do is take this piece and attach it to this piece. Go ahead and pin your shorts into 4. You already got your shirt pinned into 4 and you're all ready to go. All right, now that we got to this step, you're gonna turn your shirt upside down like this, and your shorts, they're gonna go inside out like this. All right, we got them all inside out. Now excuse the very bad not trim job, because I didn't trim it because my daughter is not quite letting me have a lot of time. So for the purpose of getting this video done, I didn't trim right here. All right, now we're gonna take the back and we're gonna match it up with our top back, and just inside here we're gonna put all of our shirt in there and line it up to the back pieces. Before we line it up to the back pieces, we're gonna start with the sides. We just know that that's our back, and then this is my side shirt and the side of my short, and we're gonna match those two together with the pin like that. You're gonna go to your back, your front. This is your front of the shirt and front of the shorts, and pin together. And then again, side of the shirt and side of the shorts together. Perfect. And now we have our back like this. You're just gonna lay it flat like this, and then that's where you're gonna pin on your back. Do not match it up with the middle pin right here. Same with this, and lay it flat where it lands and go ahead and pin. Now the reason why you don't match these up right here is because you will cause so much unnecessary stretching that it's just gonna it won't look right. So you just have to lay it flat from where you pinned your corners together, and lay it flat, and then where it lays flat, that's where you pin. And this is gonna leave an unstitched edge, which will still stitch it, but just not right now. All right, now we're gonna take it to our serger or sewing machine and go around in a zigzag stitch. Don't forget to trim, or a serger. Now before I forget, when you start stitching, don't stitch right here. Skip this part completely. So we're gonna start right here where my little corner is at, and that's where I'm gonna start stitching from. Oh. All right, get it all lined up, take out the pin, make sure your fabric is flat so you don't accidentally stitch any other part, and then just stitch all the way around. But don't forget to please not stitch that little part. All right, we got it all stitched up, and you'll end up with something like this. Now we just take out our top, flip this all inside out. Oh, flipped it the wrong way. Flip it all inside out, and you are left with this cute little romper. And then just lay it flat. Give it a little pressing to get rid of some of these curves right here. But check it out. If you followed every single step, you guys did it. Let me just turn it that way. And there you go. This is the front. Cute little stylish little thing. And the back with the double knot. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, if you did not want a double knot, all you have to do is just draw the thing once. That's it. And then this is the little part that that we didn't sew. You could take your machine and just fold it down a little bit like this, so it matches the rest of the seam allowances on this side, and just stitch it with a straight stitch. I leave it alone because since the waistband doesn't have a raw edge, this doesn't have a raw edge either, so it's no unfinished edges or anything. And then this is just from the inside of the shirt. But there we go. You're finished. And I can't wait to see all of you guys' creations.